Hello guys, hope you are all doing well. We will add a cool feature in this tutorial, favorites list. I will modify the recipes side view, the list view, to add a heart icon and a counter for each recipe card. The counter will replace this C letter, and the heart icon will be besides it. Let's start by creating the favorites database table and adding the favorites column to the recipe table. Go to Components Manager, click the Component Updates icon of our Recipe Manager component, and add a new update row to insert the update SQL code. Take care here, you need to add a new update with a new version number greater than or newer than the current component version. But the code will be inserted in the MySQL dump field of the current version row, which is 101 in this case. Here you can see the favorites table with recipe ID and user ID foreign keys. Also, the favorites column is added to the recipe table to store the total number of users added this recipe to their favorite list. Save and close. You can notice the new version number of the component. These are the two component tables before installing the update. Let's compile and install the new version to update the database. Now the database update is applied, as you can see. The new table and the new column. Well, let's go and see what is the next step. In this part, we will modify the recipe side view to add the heart icon and the favorite counter. To be ready for this change, we need to modify the recipes dynamic get to include the new favorites column in the field selection. Go and edit the recipe side view. I added the total favorites CSS class to this span to make it possible to update the text upon receiving a response from the AJAX call we will add later. Initially, the text will be set to the value of the favorites database column. Let's add a new span element to display the heart icon. I am using the UIKit icons. So let's include UIKit version 3 for this side view. Also, the data recipe attribute will help us to pass the current recipe ID value to the Ajax call as a parameter. Forgive me, I am not a front-end guy. So this may not be the optimal way to do it. At least it is working to show the more important features. Save and close. Compile and install the update. Let's refresh to see the update. Well, it is working. I will not do more styling. We'll leave it as it is to focus on the back-end work. Okay, it is time to add the Ajax part, which is a little bit complicated because it is distributed among several areas. Please, from now on, pay attention to the details. As you can see, we don't have yet an Ajax controller nor model, and we will have both very soon. Go to the recipes side view, PHP tab, and activate the custom document script function. Insert this line of code to get form token before executing the Ajax call, because it is required to be passed along with other parameters. This technique is used in Joomla to prevent against CSRF attacks. Go to JavaScript and CSS tab. Add a click event handler of the heart link element. Using the CSS class add fav. Also, the recipe ID variable will hold the value of the recipe data attribute. This is the Ajax call and the session token is appended to the URL. But the Ajax method or task called add remove fav is not declared yet. Let's add it. Go to the PHP tab, activate the Ajax methods section. This section holds the methods that will be added to the Ajax model after the component is compiled. For simplicity purposes, this method will return an associative array with only one element called action, which will be encoded into a JSON object by the Ajax controller. Also in the Ajax input section, add a new row with the values shown on the screen. This section defines the parameters which will be parsed by the Ajax controller and passed to the defined model method. In this case, we have only one parameter. Its name is ID, and the value is the recipe ID. The task name represents the Ajax controller task, which is defined in the URL of the Ajax call. While the method name represents the Ajax model method, which will be called by the Ajax controller. Click this user checkbox to restrict the execution of this method to only logged-in users, because guest users are not allowed to add and remove favorites. Let me make sure everything is okay. Well, seems okay. Save the side view. Compile and install the update. Looking at the files after applying the Ajax changes, you will notice two new files. The first is ajax.json.php in the controllers folder. As you can see, it checks the token at first, then retrieves the ID value from the request object. And if the user is logged in, it calls the Ajax model method and passes the ID value to it as a parameter. And you can notice that the result of this method is encoded and returned as a JSON object. The second file is ajax.php in the models folder. It has the method we have just declared in the Ajax methods section. There is a typo error here. Let me fix it. Compile and update again. Well, seems correct this time. I advise you to look at the two files very well. The generated code has more information to know and understand. Go to front end and log in with a registered user to test the Ajax functionality. No response. Seems another problem. Let me check. No JavaScript error. What's the problem then? I will use the debugger to find out the problem. Yes, this is the problem. The token is wrong. But why? Seems okay. Yes, I found the problem. This section generates a JavaScript file, and as you know, JavaScript files don't know PHP. So let me find another section to insert this JavaScript snippet. Yes, it is the custom script section, where you can add in PHP variables as you can see. Save, compile and install. I need to make sure the JavaScript is inserted correctly. Yes, it is in the correct file, and the session token variable is in the correct position before the JavaScript snippet. Oh, weird. It is not solved yet. Sorry, I didn't refresh. I will refresh again. It works now. Okay, everything is working now. Well, let's make it more complicated and modify the Ajax model method to insert a record in the favorites table if no record exists for the current user and the recipe ID, and removes it in case it exists. This way, we will use the same method to add and remove recipes from the favorites list. At first, let's create user object. Then query the database to find out whether the favorites table has a record for the current user and recipe. The action variable will be used as an indicator to the executed operation, whether it is insertion or deletion. Remove the record if it exists. Insert a new record if it does not exist. Also, let's change the returned JSON object to display the value of the action variable. Save. Compile and install the update. Let's test this change before making it more complicated. We will check the favorites table after clicking the heart icon. The recipe ID is 8. The current logged in user ID is 289. No record exists. Then insert a new record. Well, the action value indicates a record is inserted. Also, the database has the record with the correct values. Let's click it again to make sure it will delete the inserted record. A record is found, then delete it. Well, the action value indicates a record is deleted. Also, the record is deleted from the database. Let's modify the Ajax model method again to make it update the favorites column of the recipe table and set its value to the total number of favorites records that have the same recipe ID. Just I need to use another variable to check whether the add or remove operation is executed without problems. Also, I will change the result returned to have two more elements, as you can see on the screen. One of them is the new count of the recipe favorites to update the counter besides the heart icon. Let's display this new element, count value, instead of the action value. Save, compile and install. Refresh. Seems another problem. Let's check what it is. Here it is another typo error. Let's fix it. Compile and update the component. Well, the count value is correct. Okay, we need to improve the front end such that the counter updated correctly and also the heart filling color to be different when a recipe added or removed. Let's modify the JavaScript function to implement this feature. At the beginning, we will check whether the returned result type is Boolean, not JSON object. Then the user will be notified to log in before trying to add and remove favorites. Then, if success value is 1, it means the add or remove operation is completed successfully, and it is okay to update the counter, which is defined by the CSS class total favorites. Also, if action value is 1, which mean adding to favorites, the CSS class favorite will be added to the anchor HTML element. Otherwise, if it is -1, then it means removing from favorites, and the CSS class is removed from the anchor element. In this way, we can style the favorite CSS class with a different color to demonstrate whether the recipe is added to favorites or removed from the list. Save, compile and update the component. Refresh to reload the new JavaScript code. You can see here the anchor element does not have the favorite CSS class. Click to add to favorites. The favorite CSS class is added, but the anchor is not updated. Seems a new bug. Let me check again. Yes, one more typo error here. It should be underscore instead of dash. Update the component again. Refresh. The initial counter value is correct, but we need to make sure it will be updated on clicking the heart icon. I should remove this breakpoint to make it faster. Okay, all is working well. Still we need to add different style for the favorite CSS class. Edit the recipes side view. Go to the JavaScript and CSS tab. Add this rule in the CSS section. It fills the SVG path element with a reddish color to distinguish the recipe which is added to favorites list. Save. Compile and update the component. Refresh. Well, the heart color is changing as you can see. It reflects the status of the recipe whether it is added to the favorites list. It reflects the status of the recipe whether it is added or removed from the favorites list. I think this video is going to be a little bit long, so I prefer to continue this tutorial in another video to keep the videos short enough and easy to follow. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below and I will make sure to answer them as much as I can. Like the video if you find it helpful and subscribe to be notified when the next video is published. See you in the next video.